Black Friday.
Black Friday. It is Black Friday.
My first thoughts about Joker are that the film is brilliantly made, man. Shout out to Todd Phillips, director of The Hangover. Typically delves into the comedy space, but his take on, the origin story of one of comic book lore's most beloved supervillains, it was rather impressive, man. I gotta say, it was dope. And it's an emotionally contorting character study of Joker, of Arthur Fleck, I should say. And it's a film that cooks up a potent cocktail for action-packed disaster, but most importantly, the ingredient that all moviegoers expect to glean from great characters, and that's empathy, man. And this film does a magnificent job of pulling my empathy from out of me and making me care for somebody who I know I'm supposed to hate. Right off the bat, Joaquin Phoenix, he really bodied this role. From him losing over 45 pounds for the role to that uncontrollable laugh you see him trying to pull off. It's like this uncontrollable laugh, but you hear him trying to subdue the laugh. But in doing that, he's got this kind of constricted, choking, painfully hurtful type of laugh, and it really amplifies the idea that something's going on with him mentally that's beyond his control. But for Joaquin Phoenix to pull from a real symptom that somebody was having, or a real condition that someone was suffering from, uncontrollable laughter, and turn that and weave that into his personality, I thought that was brilliant on the behalf of Joaquin Phoenix, man. The pain he brought to the character, it just jumped straight through the screen, and it forced us to feel it, to live with it. And I mean, it's no wonder why you're hearing a lot of people, raving about his performance and saying that he's deserving of Oscar nominations and Oscar recognition for that performance. And I'm not objective to that. I think we're still in Oscar, we still have Oscar season coming up, and there's gonna be a lot more impressive and dope performances on the horizon. But it for certain was mesmerizing to see Joaquin Phoenix transform like that and become somebody that we've never really seen on screen. So hats off to young Phoenix. The cinematography to me stands out the most with this film. Lawrence Sher, the director of photography, did such an incredible job setting the tone with his camera. It feels really stuffy and uncomfortable, like we're anxiously trapped in a small space with all that pain and suffering that homie is feeling, and that the cruel world he lives in, it's just all smashed and jumbled in together. And you see it with him being positioned in between huge buildings and crammed in these tight, intimate kind of quarters with, on elevators, and in this small apartment with his mom. And through the close-ups that we see with him, we're just smack dab up close and personal with this dude. And I think they did a really good job of matching the character's state of mind with the visuals, and I think that's part of what people honestly dislike about the film. Critics were calling it a ripoff of Scorsese's Taxi Driver, in that it chronicles the tale of a man who's pushed further and further into madness before he can no longer take it, and then snaps. And that does sound a lot like this film, but I do think that Joker takes it a step further than that, and that's in the idea that the root of his rage and his hateful mass murdering violence stems from his undiagnosed mental illnesses that he suffers from. And this is where I drew the line and pushed back on that idea that mental illness alone is the byproduct of his rage. Again, we were forced to watch a man be brutalized over and over throughout the first two acts of the film, and sink deeper into what emerges is something that Gotham wasn't ready for. And for story's sake, it's convenient and dramatic enough to keep audiences, but the problem is that it's just bullshit. Strangely enough, it's been known to be bullshit for quite some time now, and the media and politicians, including the president, continue to push this narrative. Why do you think that America continues to try to pathologize white male gun violence? I'm curious to what y'all think about why that is. I have some theories, and I've been talking to some folks, and they have some interesting theories as to why that is. So I'm interested to see what y'all think. So sound off in the comment section below. Because I felt deeply for Joker's plight, I understand the thinking behind his rage, or at least I think I do. You know, he'd been lied to, humiliated, abused, misunderstood, and cast aside as nothing. And he'd had enough. You know, he just snapped. And it's fucked up. So much so that the storyline paints Joker as more of a victim than a villain. We wanted to see the origin story of a beloved supervillain, but we're smart enough to know that despite it all, Joker is indeed a villain, not a victim of societal failings, as the story kind of implies. But when you think about it, there is precedence for that type of thinking. And we see it time and time again in the wake of tragic mass murders that occur at the hands of white men. The media and politicians become both judge and psychiatrist. You know, we saw it in the case of Dylan Roof, where they argued that he was suffering from somatic disorder and crippling anxiety. We saw it with Connor Betts in the Dayton, Ohio shooting. His ex-girlfriend told the media that their relationship consisted of going out drinking and talking about mental illness. You know, with the El Paso shooting that happened this year in Texas, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, came out and said the bottom line is that mental health is a large contributor to any type of violence or shooting violence. With the Aurora, Colorado movie theater shooting, it was reported that he was seeing a psychologist specializing in schizophrenia. Adam Lanza had undiagnosed schizophrenia following the tragic Sandy Hook shootings. And then, most infamously, the depressive and the psychopath, names attributed to the Columbine murders, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. You know, it was reported by his psychiatrist that Harris was not merely a troubled kid, he was in fact a psychopath. And Klebold was a hot-headed but depressive and suicidal. So we have precedent for this type of thinking when it comes to white men and gun violence, that, you know, something's going on in their minds. I want to pull up a quote that I found from a woman named Yulu and Jeff R. Temple, who represent the Preventative Medicine Reports, and they were conducting some research on the links between gun violence, mass shootings, and mental health. And they declared that despite the public, political, and media narrative that mental health is at the root of gun violence, evidence is lacking to infer a causal link. No matter how many articles in medical journals are written that contradict this idea, America's tendency to medically explain the root motivations behind white male gun violence makes a gravely misleading correlation between mental illness and mass shootings, which in turn lightweight criminalizes those who are indeed mentally ill, despite evidence showing that only 3 to 5% of all gun violence is attributed to individuals with mental illness. Doing so also suggests that it isn't totally the fault of the perpetrator, as if partial fault absolves one of guilt in the name of justice. Joker sells this dead argument to the masses, and I mean, to be real, I'm just not buying it. So, second thoughts on Joker, the film. I took my queen to go see it over the weekend, and my second time watching it, I have to say, like, I definitely see the film differently. And before I get into what I think now about the film, seeing it a second time, here's some audio from our conversation after we watched it together.
What he did to Randall, though, because Randall fucking
he set him up. Yeah. He was the reason why the nigga, he wasn't the reason.
He came by there though to make sure he found out what he had told the police. So he wasn't even really there to help that.
No,
nigga.
He wasn't.
And he didn't even really understand the complexity of what this man had knew. What's going on?
Fires out there.
Yeah, but this is over here, or is the?
It might be an accident.
All right, because the fire is way over there.
No, that's what I was looking at.
Yeah, so for me, I was just like, oh, the way he killed him with so much aggressiveness. And I was like, yeah.
Did you think he deserved that?
Nobody deserves that. I'm gonna be real with you.
Oh.
Nobody deserves that. mean, okay, I can see if he stabbed him in the neck, it was like, all right, nigga, fuck you. But that nigga worked that body.
Yeah. And he starts smashing his head into that wall. Yeah, I'm like, bro, you done lost it. But no. The fucked up thing about that whole thing is, how do you feel about him when he kills the dude and smashes his head in, right? But he lets the little person go, and it's like, you was always nice to me. So it's like it's like they gave him a moral compass in a sense.
No, what that shows is that it's never wrong to do what you did, and you have complete control. You just choosing again, free will.
So I agree with my wife that Arthur made these choices deliberately to kill these people, and he's clearly the villain. But I definitely saw the film differently, and when you think about it, Arthur is described as delusional, right? And you learn that the social program that he was part of that was providing him with this medication was closed due to funding issues. And so it sets precedent that he's been off of his medications, and because he's also been described as delusional, we witness his first delusion while we're watching the Murray Franklin show. And all of this stuff I didn't really catch in the first watching of it. I did kind of assume that the Murray Franklin show was somewhat of a dream, because it just felt way too, good to be true. And then you jump, you flash back to Arthur as he's watching the show. At first, I had thought that he had been on the show before, and he was remembering the time that he was on Murray Franklin's show, and he was so nice to him that kind of like turned into a love affair that he had for Murray Franklin, which is why he was watching the show. But then upon the second time watching it, I started to think, like, wait a minute, like, did this really happen, or is he imagining this? And I had to start thinking, like, yo, son is delusional, so this may not even be real when you think about it. He might have been imagining this whole thing. And then I started saying, yo, well, if that's the case, then it makes perfect sense, because Sophie was not really his girlfriend. He never really opened the door, made out with her. She wasn't at the hospital, because they started to flash back and reveal that was all a figment of his imagination as well, right? And so I'm like, oh shit, they're playing us, son. They've been playing us this whole time, and I'm over here getting in my goddamn Hotep feelings about some shit, trying to say, oh yeah, this the white man talking about, mental illness and gun violence with white men, and it's not that deep, bruh. Like, it's really just a series of, dreams within a dream. Who knows what else Joker was being delusional about? If this whole story is being told by Arthur from his perspective at Arkham, that's bananas. If the film is one big delusion, does that hurt the film? Sound off in the comment section below. Give us that thumbs up. Hit the sub button if you haven't already done that. I don't know. I could kind of see it both ways. You know what I'm saying? We don't truly have an established origin story for Joker already, so why not allow him to make up his own? The dope part about that is that if you let him tell the story, he was the victim of societal failings, as I said before, which also explains the reasoning behind the inaccurate correlations between his mental illness and his acts of violence. So that's kind of dope, man. It kind of like checkmates me. If that's the way Todd Phillips and the filmmakers decided to tell this story from his perspective, then I have no grounds to stand on when it comes to making the correlation that, America's always trying to explain away, white male violence with mental illness. Like, Joker's playing me, and he's playing right into my own biases that, I have against, folks who try to make those correlations. Go see it twice. If you haven't seen it once, you should definitely go see it once, and then maybe see it another time, because it's one of those films that it's slow, but it's also a lot of data involved. And one last thing I wanted to say about this film before I get up out of here, and that's it definitely, for me, watching this film a second time opened me up to like realize like society, even like today, like, you know, don't be so quick to judge. You know what I'm saying? Not everything is exactly what it seems. If Arthur is the author, then I think that it makes perfect sense as to why he would victimize himself and make you feel bad for him and make it seem like all of the people who he murdered got what they deserved. You know what I'm saying? It's not like the film or the filmmakers is making an excuse for it. It's simply telling you that you can't trust the individual who's telling you the story because they're a fucking psychopath. What do you guys think, man? What perspective was this film told from? Was it told from his perspective? Was it linear? Were we witnessing everything in real time? What about Sophie? Did he kill Sophie? Did you guys notice that when he was sitting on the couch, there was an ambulance, you know, passing by? Was it pulling up to the house? Was it leaving the house? What was going on with that? Yeah, man. So that's my review on Joker. I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was dope. I think Joaquin Phoenix, like I said earlier, did a fantastic job. The cinematography was amazing. I got to see it with my wife, so that was even a bonus, which means I got to see it twice. I thought it was a fantastic film, and I encourage everybody to go see it. Don't be so quick to judge is the lesson that I learned from this film, because I got into my Hotep nigga feelings, and come to find out it might have all been one big joke, and you know, the joke might have been even on me for jumping to conclusions. I still stand behind the evidence that says that, you know, making correlations between mental illness and gun violence is incredibly dangerous and unethical and inaccurate. The science doesn't back it up. But I think that's a conversation that can stem from this film, but I don't think that that's the central overarching point that this film was trying to make. And watching it a second time helped me understand that a lot more, and I'm grateful for that. That's my review, man. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that, man. It's your boy Tommy Bunnz. It's the Black Friday podcast. I'll see y'all on the next video, man. Peace.